Naomi, I muted us and we are recording.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's two of each.
Very good. I know.
Yeah. That is board movement too. So they state this position is not becoming available for a while, so I don't want to go anywhere else.
So just make sure we put in there.
What is worth, Naomi? This pen? Not sure why.
I'll have to wait to change the paper.
No. Maybe just a different pen for the certificate. Yeah, I can't get this one to write. Writes it fine on the other paper, but it's unhappy on this. And I don't want to, have these poorly signed.
Is that the same? No, it's different. No, no, one.
That might be because of the printing on it.
Sorry to keep you all waiting. Samantha escorts,
Yeah.
our guest out.
Sometimes you guys are all taking a nap, like, with your eyes open. Because I admit it. I admit that I never done that before.
And Naomi on this correction. So instead of grants, there should be deficits. Not our deficient. I'm not sure how you want it.
Okay, go ahead and say it and then I'll change it.
Very good.
Water, electric, versus for a few hours.
That's okay, I'll just make sure that that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That could be true too.
Dr. King, will you help expedite the goodbye? Thank you.
I can deal with Henry, I can deal with Matt. And wait.
No, I don't.
Thank you.
Yeah, anytime you need to walk out of your. Oh, yeah, I should mention to our new board members, if you need to take a call, personal break, whatever it is, you walk out of the boardroom at any moment. Walking out is the quorum, so we will be taking no action with you.
And that door opens back.
This one, yeah, and I believe you got a key card today,
Yes.
and the door going this way will take the key card. And the courtyard is secure, so there should not be anyone that can just wander into the courtyard.
Boy, oh boy, does word travel fast. That was Maria at EP #1. Wanting to know how we had lunch with the commissioner.
So you're being recorded, Samantha.
Yeah, that's fine. She's on her way back and she actually was talking about stopping in potentially because she's coming back from their board meeting. They're about done. We were coordinating on dinner plans and compact meeting stuff, so I apologize about that, but boy, does word travel.
Back to our open session agenda. So we've completed our,
No.
have we completed our budget discussions and finance solutions, item 13B?
No, we haven't. You got some of it.
So Samantha, I believe it was the recommend. Thank you for getting that noted. I believe it was the recommendation of the management committee that discussions on current year budget finance solutions be handled by the policy overhaul committee. Did I understand that correctly?
No, he did not. So budget discussions don't involve the board. The budget discussion was, can staff and the management committee start the budget process under the same sort of scope that we did it last year? And the answer to that was yes. The policy overhaul is where we are going to talk about things like making up for the budget shortfall and finance solutions, but not
Very good.
the budget itself.
Thank you. That is the part that I'm getting to today, and I apologize if I was not clear on that. We need to get to resolution on that fairly rapidly, so that our finance director, has enough time to implement those before the end of the budget year. So that brings us, is there anything else with regards to budget discussions or finance solutions which we have not covered? Hearing none, we will move to 13C, reorganization of EBID apartments for the status and update on hiring.
So Delise, do you want to do the ditch writer hiring update briefly?
Yes, we are actually, we have hired, 2 for the central. One is starting Monday, the other has started, or is starting tomorrow, I'm sorry. We have, one who's already been hired for the south, one starting tomorrow, and we have 2 testing for the south, so they're kind of on deck. Hopefully we'll be interviewing them next week. We have hired our, land and licensing tech and engineering. We have pending director of engineering. We have 2 processing for equipment operators for the central area. And one of those, who's in process, previously worked for us, and he also ran irrigation, so he will also be helping down south, as an additional ditch writer for 6A. So we're doing fairly well on hiring. The only place we haven't hired for is Hatch, but we're not getting any applications. So if you know of anybody, you guys can start pushing for it. But we do have enough people to work through maintenance. So we have 4 in maintenance that will be covering the open positions.
I mean, we would have 1, 2,
Honestly, we need 5, but right now we're looking for 1.
5.5 to long.
If
It
you
was
want
that
a
way
full
last
person,
year as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but our-
but we'll take 1 right now. I haven't gotten any.
Dang, you guys are rough on it. I guess so. Gee.
So along with that, we are looking as we go through the hiring process, senior leadership are reporting to us, I need this, I need that, I need a lot of help. And so one of the things we are working on is looking as we go at, well, are we hiring for a position that used to be something important, but now is something we could do something different with? So for example, the director of engineering, Bill and I are very seriously considering making recommendations to you on how we might split up some of the obligations of the engineering department into, for example, totally hypothetical example, engineering, surveying, legal. Instead of the engineer doing all those things, you have an engineer, you have a surveyor, and then you have a legal department that handles things like permit conditions and things like that. We're working on figuring out how and when to make those recommendations, and that's where, in addition to finance issues, we'll start in policy overhaul, potentially looking at the reorganization of the district to address where we're going in the future. Now, I was telling Tracy earlier, the two committees that we have set up are going to have a lot of overlap, and that's by design. Because what Phil and I are doing daily, it's across the board. But what we do to make board decisions is all of you will have the final presentation or multiple final presentations at the board meeting. In the meantime, the committees will be putting into staff to get us where we need to be. And you will get a lot of overlap. So in the settlement implementation side of things on that committee, we will be talking about what do we do with all this money and how do we do it? And do we need grant writers in-house? Do we need a surveyor? Do we need a lawyer? We'll also be talking about those issues in the sense of policy overhaul and restructuring EBID. What do we want to be doing going forward? Where do we want to focus our priorities? So there's going to be overlap. And what I would not worry about as a board member is whether you're missing a conversation on one committee or another. They're going to be duplicate conversations. This is just a different way for me to get you guys more up to speed quicker without having constant board meetings that Naomi and I have to spend hours both putting together and then buttoning up when it's over with.
Sam, on that legal part, especially on those permits and things like that. I think of all the things, and I'm not complaining about being on the board of directors, but that's one of the things that I've always felt was a pretty big waste of our brain waste. Not that I have any, but if we could do that legal before we get to here. But I don't know how to do
We've
that.
had lots of those suggestions. In fact, I have a running list, for my first month ever doing both my job and Gary or the manager's job. My list went from about 14 to 15 items to almost 2 full pages of long list of both management and legal items that I need to bring to you guys. And with that, I have suggestions that have come in along the way that I'm keeping in mind as we go down this list. Like, for example, Greg has said for years, we shouldn't be looking at licenses unless they're oddballs, unless they're requests for variances. Greg has also said, we shouldn't be approving contracts on the back end. We should be approving the RFP. Do we even want to go out to bid for that? You do that in certain realms, but you don't do it in others, and it may not be clear cut. I mean, Leo needs contract labor constantly for things like concrete deliveries and things like that. Well, I'm not gonna put that kind of RFP in front of you guys. That would be ridiculous. But should we be putting RFPs in front of you when it comes to what the engineering services look like, what the legal services look like? Maybe that's a flip we can do. So it's not necessarily gonna be this one size fits all approach, and that's why the policies are gonna have to be, you know, really, it's gonna be a hard look that you take at them, but with the constant board suggestions, and I've been keeping all those down for years. I mean, one of the suggestions that still stands out to me is, why are we selling our property instead of leasing it? Well, that's where the additional sources of revenue come into the policy overhaul, because she already wrote us a leasing policy. We just haven't done anything with it yet. I have already worked on the fees policy for years in certain realms. They're working on fees policy. Anna is already emailing me and having meetings with me on alternative sources of revenue. She's been doing my research that we will need to feed into this policy overhaul sort of thing. Go ahead, Anna.
Please.
Just, I'm sorry, Anna, don't have you engineering, just to give you an idea, you just mentioned the leasing policy. On one of the permits this morning, it was Mr. Lepinski, the waive fees were $17,000. And what that permit is not all 17,000 for use of right of way. There were some other crossings and all that, but I believe the lease for that portion, and it wasn't a very big portion, it may have been about 10,000. If it had been a lease versus the permit. So, and it is agricultural, so I don't know if you would like to do it. Waive fees for agricultural or do it.
We're gonna be going over all of this, and what happened to us internally was, and this is not attacking anybody, but this is definitely gonna have to be said. When the farmers say we want change, right? Well, what they're seeing is different than what we're seeing. Well, they got change. And what happened was our internal team was broken up. And so we were already dealing with minor things like engineering has a spreadsheet that determines what fees are charged. None of us really know how it works. We just know inputs here gives us this output. We were already working on looking at that. Gary and I, Zach, we were already trying to decipher what was Henry doing. In the meantime, then I lose Gary, then I lose Zach, and now I don't have Gary, Zach, or Henry. And so we just kind of had to set that aside and keep doing what we were doing. And then we lost Gail. And then Karen sits down to try and figure out, well, how the heck was Gail keeping track of everything? And she was like an octopus with 19 arms though, and all these spreadsheets. And now we're trying to decipher what those spreadsheets even mean. And so what happened with the change was our teams and our understanding of how things work got broken up. That's not a bad thing, but what it means is right now, we don't know what it should look like, because we don't necessarily have a strong understanding of what those spreadsheets were doing, and the people who were doing that work are not here. So we are starting the process with policy overhaul even bigger than last year this time, of just redoing. We're just gonna have to redo it. Because right now you have a fee structure that none of us in this room can really deal with other than maybe Anna and some of them. But see, we're really guessing at times. One of the things we've looked at is what are other irrigation district fee structures? What do they look like? And they will hand you a piece of paper. Here's your fee structure and it's listed out, processing, this, that, or the other. And there's standard rates that have taken into account engineering, surveying, land use values, legal, everything that goes into it. So to a farmer who wants change, when we hand them the change of, well, now you want a harvest gate, it's gonna cost you $15,000. They're gonna go, holy crap, that's not the change we wanted, but that's frankly the change the district might need, right? So you're probably gonna see some angry farmers. You're gonna have calls for people's heads to roll again, but the reality is that's what staff and our side is dealing with, is that we had these good structures. They were working. Were we making enough money? Probably not. But we had everything kind of set where we knew how things were gonna work. Now that you've shaken that bag, everybody's trying to figure out, okay, where did we land? And Anna's fee structure isn't working for her. Karen's accounting isn't working for her. Leo's finally getting equipment, but we need a lot more, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be adjusted for. So that's gonna be where the policy overhaul committee really rolls up their sleeves and kind of tells us, the farmers will tolerate a permit that costs them this much, but they will not tolerate an assessment that costs them this much. That's gonna be where the.
Take El Paso, like you said, that gate, they charge like hell for a crossing.
Do we
I
have?
mean, it's not no little deals.
Yeah,
$100, $500. It's $30,000, $20,000, $15,000 for a pipe going. That's why they're making money, and they get the city too.
For years, Gary and I were trying to set up a meeting with EP #1 on their permitting structure and how it works and why they do what they do and how that plays out for them. And they bucked us for so long. They would not meet with us because of the litigation. They thought we were digging into them for some reason related to Texas versus New Mexico, and they didn't want to open their, books to us, basically. It's not what we were doing. We were just trying to figure out what they're doing. Then what would happen is they would talk to Zach and tell Zach what they were doing, but Zach would come back and I would say, well, we can't do that because our laws are different. But I need to understand why they're doing that, because I might be able to have a different law we can invoke to do something similar. We have not been able to get that conversation struck up. Phil's gonna try and work on that for tomorrow too. We will see them tomorrow, so hopefully we can pin them down.
They're gonna be the, I'm gonna be secret.
Ask them to go to lunch after. So those are gonna be, that's where, when you say budget issues and budget shortfall, policy overhaul is really where we're gonna have to make that up, because your policies and how you charge and what you charge for are gonna be where you make up the budget deficit long-term, not this
Yes.
year, long-term.
I concur with that. We need to get Karen a solution for this year. Too.
Plus, you do like the mute deal. We talked about that.
Yep.
So as far as Karen's solution for this year, I have asked Gary to start doing some research with me on a few options, and I don't think we're prepared to present those yet. But Karen, are we gonna die like within the next 4 weeks?
No.
Okay, so I think we're good.
I agree, but I would ask the committee to start considering what is it you're gonna recommend to the board as that solution, so that we can get one. It'd be nice if we could be acting on this at the May regular board meeting. Not essential, but by June, we've got to have an answer. So let's try to get one done by May if we can.
And Karen, remind me, your budget for irrigation season was for 2 months?
1.
1 month, yeah. So you got that added problem now too, that our season's gonna go 3 months. So there's that, not that you need another reason to lose sleep at night, but
Free to change.
yeah, we're gonna have 3 and change, but we budgeted enough for 1 month. So obviously Leo's not gonna go immediately into maintenance. We might be able to steal some from Leo. Maybe you guys give me a summer vacation. That'd be a nice thing to do. Although I did take 4 days off. I took 2 work days and 2 weekends, Saturday and Sunday, 4 total days off. And Naomi and I were behind how many days? 4. We should have gotten your board packets out to you last week. Yeah, So understand, I can only do so much, and when I do take time off, you fall behind. There's just not enough people to do the work that we're doing.
Which is something we're gonna have to continue considering as we move forward in the reorganization of EBID departments. How are we gonna structure our legal counsel? We've talked about the way it was done before. We've talked about the way it's been done in the recent past. Both of those are very divergent. Somewhere in the middle is where we need to land. We're gonna have to make a decision.
So one of the things, the last thing on my list under reorganization was new legal hiring. And so we are working on hiring for engineering. We need to start working on hiring for legal. Selena's very busy. I'm very busy. What I have decided to do, and this may not be the board's ultimate decision, but what I've decided to do is open a satellite office in Albuquerque and hire someone up there. I can't get people to come down here. Anytime they do come down here, it's for a limited time. They want the experience, then they want to go back to work in the metro area. I've never been able to hire, train, and keep someone. I get through hiring and training and they leave. So I'm hoping that if I hire someone up there who can stay up there, who has chances of, actually staying with us long enough to see that there is a career here, my hope is that our chances would be better at retention. They will not be local, but technology is such that they don't necessarily need to be, as long as you have some who are still local. Phil is not local all the time either. So Phil will be training my new lawyer. And I know that sounds very strange, but Phil and Eric and I have already talked about this in depth. And for what you will need a lawyer doing, at least initially, that would be a good option, because we're going to start by hiring a water lawyer, someone who can train under me, who can also help with other clients. I can keep them busy as I'm training them, as Phil is training them. What you will be looking at hiring for in-house counsel is the other side of my job. Now, what people don't understand is I'm actually specialist in 2 areas. I'm a specialist in water and natural resources. I'm a specialist in small government organizations. So you're not my only small government. I have multiple small municipalities, political subdivisions, or whatnot that I represent. So I'm a sort of specialist in those 2 realms. I can only handle so much. And what I can see coming down the pipe is that I have more work coming down on the water law side of things that I will need help with implementation, with adjudication, than I do on the stuff that Karen, Naomi, everybody's already got a good handle on. Anna, Karen, Naomi, they can write my contracts for me. All I have to do is proofread them. I'm gonna have to teach a baby lawyer to do that stuff. They're already doing it. And then the other thing is, we're training Naomi to be a paralegal. She will be the person who trains your baby lawyer who comes in-house, who takes over the government side of things, the finance, the HR, the day-to-day licensing, land use, all those kinds of things. And then you'll have a separate water lawyer. Frankly, everything the board has tried to do over the years to get me help, everything Gary and I have tried to do is not much help. Selena's been a ton of help, but Selena also has multiple jobs. So she's got limited capacity too. So we're gonna make another run at wasting my time and trying to train someone else. And I say wasting my time because every time I've done it, it has cost you tremendously. It's wasted my time, it's caused me extra work, and then they leave. But we've got to try it again, because there's no other option for you. If the feedback you get, Greg primarily is the one receiving it, that Samantha shouldn't be the one that's here. If you want to get rid of Samantha, find a new lawyer, but we can't, right? They're not here. So we have to make them. And I know that the mentality of some people is we shouldn't be making unicorns, but you guys can't find cookie cutter lawyers who can do what I do. It's not gonna happen.
Questions regarding the reorganization of departments and things that we need to discuss today from the board. These are the things that we've got our work cut out for us. There's work involved from here to there. Thank you.
So that takes care of my, okay. Additional access to board meetings and just generally board information. One of the things that we did this month was we PDF'd a copy of your board book to you. That was by necessity, but boy, did we actually think that worked well. Aside from the fact that it took us 16 emails to figure out whether they were going or not, we I have multiple other, small entities, and one of them, the Village of Hatch, uses a software that's very helpful, and we publish to our trustees, date and timestamps, what time it was sent to you, when you received it, so that that's your public notice requirement, right there on the document.
Like one click, or I send it to you guys, and all I gotta do is click one thing. Right, that's what.
And so I connected her with her at Hatch. And they talked, and that was something that I've got Naomi looking into, because that would be a good way to share information with you. In the past, we've had a lot of board members who said, nope, mail it to me. But Karen, how much do our mailings cost a year?
20,000 or more.
That you're just.
So that's not the board
No,
as a
No.
total.
as a total. So if we can figure out a way to stop blowing $20,000 a year on mailing. A lot of those are mailings to the farmers. We've tried listservs in the past. One of the common feedback we've received is that delete farmers, others, Gail used to tell me, when you pull the trigger and you tell the farmer, we're going electronic tomorrow, they resist. But if you tell them, we're going electronic and by such and such date, you're not getting mailings anymore, they will adjust over time. The biggest problem we had during that time period of trying to go more electronic was some board members still had flip phones and were adamant that they did not want electronic communications. And so to adjust to the board members' wishes, we kept mailing, we kept doing all these bulky, clunky, and we're not even looking at copying costs. So we're looking at ways to tighten things up. And one of the things you could consider is better access to our information and back and forth with each other by electronic means. Now, the other thing is related. Our board meetings went from no virtual to pandemic, all virtual.
Before we move on to that, Samantha, I want to comment on the idea of electronic copies of our board book. Most months, there is no confidential information in our board book. I am accustomed, when I attended other governmental meetings, that the prep materials, the non-confidential prep materials that the elected governors had was available to anyone that attended the meeting. It would certainly simplify the task of getting this stuff delivered if we went and got it the same way our constituents would, which would be to go to the EBID website and get it. All the confidential stuff that we would need to prep for a meeting would have to come separately. That is a consideration for it.
That,
Say post it on the website.
That is what I'm saying.
that wouldn't address the issue of what I was trying to address, which was publication time and date stamp and all of that stuff.
That is also correct.
Because we could do both essentially.
Yeah.
But, one
But
of
I'd
the
like to
things
try to
we've
simplify
talked
it to
about-
as few things as possible.
One of the things we've talked about, particularly with Patrick Lopez, is giving every department their own webpage. Having them put information up regularly, not a big time suck, but maybe a couple sentences update here and there, or pictures or something that they're working on. So that the farmers I can tell you, Rhett is on his phone constantly, and half the time I look over and he's just snooping on SCADA or whatever, is on EBID system, all of our telemetry and stuff that's public there. If it was right here and easy, it would be something the farmers start doing if you start conditioning them to have to do that. But part and parcel with that was the open meetings. We stopped having just virtual meetings because we were having a lot of trouble keeping track of what was being said. Lots of chatter, bad feedback, bad recordings. So then we went to this like hybrid where you had to be in person, but you could listen online, you could participate online. Then we shut down all online. The number one piece of feedback I've received over the last month is, now that you're in that seat, Sam, can you make those meetings open to us again? Because the governments that we work with, Bureau of Reclamation, IBWC, State Engineer's Office, ISC, everybody we work with, they want to be able to attend online and listen from Santa Fe, from where's Liz, Kentucky or something, Kentucky. And these are people we're working with on projects real time daily, and they want to listen. For example, I let Liz Verdecchia listen in this morning because restoration sites are a legal requirement. Okay, and so we'll get into how that works, but she needs to know, just like any other farmer, what the water outlook is gonna be, but her in particular, to make sure we and her are meeting legal requirements. So we don't like to treat people different than the farmers, but at the same time, Liz actually has a pressing reason for being here and couldn't be here because she's in Kentucky. So she asked for a special ability to attend this month. And she actually wanted to address the board on this issue of additional access to board meetings. Because the number one thing you're gonna need is better technology to do it. You have a pretty good setup, but we're gonna need a little bit better technology. But I will tell you one thing, nobody's going backwards. So the days of just in-person meetings, nobody's going that direction anymore. So when you're looking at policy overhaul, where do you want to take the district? Be thinking about those things because we're getting a lot of inquiries from people in Santa Fe we work with, people in other parts of the country that would like to listen in occasionally. And you'd be surprised how many people actually go on, look at our agenda and go, oh, I actually need to be there. I'm gonna log in at 10:15. And they want that ability to do that. I do that. In fact, Gary used to send me every other week, hey, so-and-so's having this meeting, go to this. I don't do that anymore because I haven't had someone directing me, but that's something I do, for example, to the Interstate Stream Commission. If I see an agenda topic, I would plan my day to log in at the right time. We're getting a lot of requests for that, not on the farmer level, but at the level that I work on, which is intergovernmental communications.
So on that, again, from my experience, there is what I've seen is the most expensive way to go. Doñana County has an AV system in their boardroom, multiple cameras. There is a person that is the technician that is present at every board meeting that's being recorded, whether it be the county commissioners or any other board that is conducting a meeting there. It works very well. It's expensive. My guess is to set up something like this in this room is probably between 20 and 30 grand, maybe more. And you need someone to run.
But the Interstate Stream Commission just sends out a call-in number.
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. King,
I spend a lot of time on the other end of this. And what would really help me is if we had like one mic there, one mic there, one mic there, one mic there. And I know we don't want any hot mic issues.
Not here.
So the kind mic where you have to have your hand on it to talk, and when you take your hand off it, it shuts off.
Yeah, I just looked into a few of those and I'm thinking maybe 2,000 just for a few mics and stuff like that. It's nowhere near 20,000.
Elise.
I'm on another board and we just bought an owl, which is a mic and project and a video. And so it sits center and whenever you're talking, it faces you. And then if somebody else's talks, it turns. So whoever's on the other side can actually see who's talking instead of just general
It's
voices.
voice activated.
Yes.
Yeah, and depending on
That
the
thing would
size
be
of the room.
spinning in this room.
Well, I that might.
be one person at a time. Elise.
I recognize that, Mr. President, but when we get into the conversation mode that we regularly get into, no president has ever been able to control
I'll
that.
keep working on it. Elise.
I was just saying, that's just another option, and our board isn't as big as this, but it works well when we have meetings of about 30 people. So the people on the other end are able to hear what people are commenting on. We just bought it, that was about $1,100 just for the owl.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's other better technology.
I
but that's
looked
what we're
into
doing.
that one, and that one for this one, we would need 2 owls. So it'd be a question of like 2,000, maybe $3,000. It's everything we've looked into is nowhere near 20,000.
Right.
Excellent. Again, the one in the county, very sophisticated, very expensive. And it requires a technician.
And the ISC actually was using basically like our Star phone, but they have mic connectors. And so what they have is the main phone sits up by the chairman, and then they have the Star connectors in front of the board members. And then one at the presenters table, and you call in, you don't get video, you just call in and you can hear everything clearly. And then you hang up when you're done. And they don't track who comes and goes. They just have the call in, you join, and then you leave, basically. So I come and go regularly. In fact, for ISD meetings, a lot of the time, I'll join when I know I'm thinking, they're on track, and then I'll do other things until they hit my meeting topic. I'll focus on the meeting topic, and then I'll either hang up or I'll just put them on hold until they get to my next meeting topic. And they don't know that you're coming and going. If they do, they're not making a big deal about it because they don't have to accept you into the meeting and do any work to let you come and go. So
We have
that's something we would be looking at.
We have visual presentations, so I'm hoping that at the very least, the visual presentations can be transmitted. I'm going to pull it back to the board. You've heard feedback on requests from other government agencies that they would like to be able to attend and hear what we're doing. I have certainly heard from farmers that they would like a way to know what's happening without having to come and spend the day here, because it is just too cumbersome to do for all of our constituents. What's the will of the board? What do
There
you
you go. You see a lot of farmers that got link forms. You got a lot of farmers out there that want to be on Zoom and all that. I mean, it wasn't hurt nothing. I mean, it costs a little bit. The Zoom was okay, except when I was listening to it. One guy said, he started talking, then, well, you gotta have who's number one, who's number two, who's number three to talk. Because then two guys start talking, and you don't know, but the chair has to be, okay, you're number one, you're number two, and you're number three. Then it'd be more.
Well, to be
But-
fair,
I know.
what happens when you're on Zoom meetings is that I don't think you can see the full room, because when
No.
we're on Zoom meetings, we don't have trouble with talking over each other. But I think you're not seeing the Zoom screen the same way we all do. So you don't know if it's time to talk or not. But in professional meetings, we've been doing this for a long time now, and we don't have the talking over each other. It's just a protocol you learn to get through when you're doing it enough. The main problem we were having before was that, with our technology setup, we weren't actually hitting the mark when it came to the open meeting, because you couldn't hear well at all times from wherever you were remotely. And so, we needed to be very careful that we weren't violating the open meeting.
Well, I worked on everything, trying to see what's going on, and all of a sudden he pushes the button and everybody comes on. Now, I don't know if that's how you do it or not, because I could hear it, but I couldn't see you, I couldn't see anybody, and I said, well, if this meeting's gonna be like that, I can't see nobody. Then you went and pushed the button, and all of a sudden, it was, I don't
Well, we
know.
saw you with your hair everywhere in your pajamas on.
Oh.
Bringing it back, what is the will of the board? Thank you very much, James.
Well, I like the idea that he was talking about where you have the mic set up now. The owl may be a good thing to explore, but I sure think it's nice if you can just call in and hear that meeting clearly. That's what you need. You just need to be able to hear clearly and what's going on, whether it be 2 or 3 people talking at the same time. You'll figure out where you want to land on the agenda and where you want to put your priority for listening. And once you hear that and then get back out of there, I like that better than the Zoom. I mean, you may like the Zoom.
Well, I don't know if I like it, I only did it once.
You only did it once, because that, first of all, you gotta go through an act of Congress, I do, to get
Yeah.
all my kids out of that damn office up there, because we got people that are farming and irrigating and wanting to know what to do. And you've heard them come in there and start talking to me right in the middle of that, and that aggravates everybody. But if I could just call in and listen, and then tag out when I wanted to, tag in, tag out, I like that.
To be clear, I'm not suggesting that, Joe Paul, you would not get to tag in and tag out. We would have board meetings, you would still show up. We would just be making the board meetings available via Zoom. Now, what we have been doing is we've only been making the Zoom meetings available to us. Since that got shut down to the public, one of us who needs to be here to run business needs to be here but can't be here. Like when she wanted to try and get COVID, we said, well, we need you, but you can't show up and sit next to me. So she zoomed in, or when Phil has to stay in Albuquerque. But the idea would be that you would get more public listening in, but not participation necessarily, just the ability to listen in. But the meeting would still take place in person in this room.
Absolutely.
Dr. King, you had an input.
Yeah, no, when many times when we have a meeting, I have to call Naomi and say, could you please set me up a link to join in? And if it was just routine, I think that would be a lot easier for all of us.
Hopefully to the point that you could publish the link on the website. You just go to the website and click, or have a call-in number.
In fact, most public organizations are including a link on their agenda if they are doing public meetings in that way.
Other comments from the board? Is there anyone that would like to not increase the access to these board meetings, that want to say, if you're interested in the business we're conducting, you must show up in person? Is that a viewpoint that's held by anyone who wishes to be expressed?
Use technology, get more people involved.
Helps with communication.
I concur, Frank Paul. With that, as I understand the will of the board, we're giving guidance to staff to investigate our options for audio and video, with, I would suggest, at least a mic per table, and preferably a requirement to push a button to talk. And that when you release the button, it stops recording.
Get directional mics too.
Mhm.
But I think Joe Paul is right. First priority is audio, second priority is video.
Any disagreement with that? Is that sufficient direction to staff?
Yeah.
Thank you. Moving on to item 13E, the general management committee update.
I actually have to go backwards, Greg. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Reorganization update on hiring. I forgot to say one thing, and that was, like I said, I'm changing half of the stuff. I have asked Gary, Phil, and Eric to help me address concerns from primarily Anna and Karen right now. But others I imagine will be looped in, and that's that we need a lot of data entry level employees. We need a lot of help, and rather than trying to hire temps, which I can tell you right now, I can't find from my law firm, rather than trying to hire, low level employees, we actually have a mechanism set up with WRRI at NMSU already for interns. And so I have asked them to go in and reactivate and see if we can just start getting some interns. It may be that we can only get interns to help on it initially. That's where they were originally moved to, was that it was sort of an engineering, bringing them up within that department. I'm hoping that we can kind of be creative with the broad scope and get data entry people for people like James, Karen, get some of our workload caught up so that you have students who, as Anna very eloquently put it, they're energized, they want to learn, they want to work, they want to do this stuff versus us that are exhausted already and we have to do it, and we, don't get me wrong, we want to, but we're just tons of work. Where do we ever even start? If you had some of these students in there doing some of this data entry level stuff, that might help a lot of us at the level that you're seeing in this room. So Eric and Phil and Gary are going to be working on that. And that was the last part of my update on hiring.
And to be clear, we already have that agreement in place with New Mexico State University.
Never had
One,
one turns around here all the time.
Yes, exactly. And so when they all came to me and said, I need 6 employees, I was going, holy moly, we can't pay for that. But what we can do is try and pay a student beans and tacos, and we've all been there. And I pretty much had to pay Gary to work here my first 2 years. So, we can do it where you bring these people up within the organization, and these students, actually, if they are hungry enough, like Anna and I are thinking, they will want to, you'll get students who want to work here because they want to work here, not because the pay. It's just going to be the experience. So we're hoping to push that button pretty hard. And Gary and my 2 big doctors who have those good connections at NMSU are hopefully going to get that going pretty quickly. And that was the only other, sorry about that one.
thank you, Samantha. Item 13E, the general update from management committee.
Okay, first one, before I forget, new board members need to see at least 2 days for bios and pictures.
Yeah, if you have a bio already and you want to send it to me, Frank Paul, I still need yours also.
Ever told you needed one?
Well, normally that isn't something I would do. It was normally coming from our.
Start PR.
Yeah, through PR, but I'll get it and we can get it together. And I have Sal's picture, but I haven't gotten his yet.
You can just use Sam's from my next location.
So when he comes in to marker on his own picture, it's
Yeah.
his own picture. I did finally tell them, Gary, I did finally. The other thing that I have for you on the management committee that I specifically have for you is that you will recall a few months ago after we lost Gail, Dr. Sullivan commissioned an internal process audit, and that has been completed. We have the report on that. I have reviewed it. Gary is going to be reviewing it with me. My understanding is staff had already reviewed and adjusted certain things. I'm bringing this to you because the primary issue I found with the process audit was that there was a general lack of understanding of what we were doing by the auditors to be able to produce what I thought would have been more fair results. So while they did flag certain issues that we have adjusted to, there was also a lack of information. I think a lack of understanding of certain things. So some of their recommendations, I actually am going to sit down and talk to Gary about, because we've either tried it before, or we've been there, done that, certain legal issues occurred, there were certain problems. So I wanted to flag that for you guys because it's not going to be coming before you specifically. It was intended to help staff and the new manager who were just trying to figure things out. And it was very helpful in that regard, but there is no real reason to bring that forward anymore, other than that we're relying on Gary to kind of help work through a couple of last things that, frankly, I was confused as to why they even suggested certain things.
We have a copy of it. Any board member that wants to review it, you have access to it.
On the whole, though, it was a good idea to have done that. It was educational, I believe, for staff internally. And we are working on several of the recommendations, like, for example, software upgrades and things like that. So those were already things the board had said, go ahead and go do. So then for my purposes on management committee, we have had 2 staff meetings in the last, well, in the last 2 weeks. Or we're now down to a staff meeting every other week, is how I should say that. So we're not meeting every week. Initially, when everything went down, we called staff in right away. We were trying to get a feel for what their hot button items were, but now we're at the point where staff are running the show. So they're all here. I don't think we need to go through every single department update because it hasn't really changed much. I mean, Leo, you tell us all about your dump trucks again, but we've got dump trucks coming. Karen could tell us all about how budget is failing us right now, but those are all things we're consistently working through. So I asked the management to show up in case you had questions or in case they had anything pressing, but not really necessary that we spend a ton of time there, at least from my perspective.
So my report on that is, as a board member on that committee, my role is substantially reduced now. Senior leadership is moving forward and actually operating the district. There do not appear to be any policy buyers that we need somebody attending these meetings. I am no longer attending staff meetings. I attend twice a week. We have a 30 minute to an hour meeting amongst the management committee, make sure that we're all on the same page of where things are going with the district. But I am no longer coming into the district or playing an active role at those staff meetings.
And I don't want to speak for staff, but the goal was that we were not going to meeting them to death. And what ended up happening was that Phil and I found a very natural split. And with Greg's involvement, the management committee initially was constituted for a specific purpose. Keep the district moving in the right direction and keep all avenues of communication where they need to be. We needed a farmer communicating. But when I started digging in with our lobbyists, with other irrigation districts, the #1 feedback, and of course, I'm researching this as we go and looking at our insurance coverage, all the different various ideas about liability and decisions that certain people should or could or can't make. And what immediately flagged for me was you absolutely want your board members in their lane. Bill and I have liability coverage for various different things. Employees within EBID have lots of coverage. but your bond is all that protects you, or it's your farm. And so I called Greg and I said, not to cut you out, but you're out, because I'm not putting your farm up. And he basically said, whoa, yeah, call me if there's a policy issue, but he's been backing away. We spend 30 minutes to an hour with him every Tuesday and Thursday, briefing him on what we're doing, but Phil and I found a very natural split in that, he's an engineer, he's running pretty much field ops and engineering. He's working closely with the engineering department, with James, with Leo, with Patrick. And I'm more in the office with Delise, Naomi, Karen, trying to keep things here under control. Greg comes in every now and then and signs things that someone of your position would need to sign anyway. So we'll talk more about certain personnel related issues in closed session.
And my primary role in those meetings is to listen for things that I'm like, we need to bring that to the board. So that I know how to set the agenda. So staff actually does all the work of putting together the agenda. It is my responsibility to ensure that things that come before you that I have noted are here.
I actually wanted to say that's not your responsibility, and I would not want you to ascribe that to yourself. That is the manager's responsibility for the entity. And then the manager brings those issues to the board president, and the board president then decides, do we do this now or later? So Greg is helping me rearrange the furniture, but I have brought the furniture to the room in the first place. And that's a very important distinction, because Greg is not running the day-to-day operations that would step him outside of his insurance coverage. And we've been very careful to make sure of that. So as far as the way management is going, I can't speak for the staff, but I can tell you, I'm not doing near as much management work as I was in the first couple of weeks of this, because everybody now understands where we are at the table and they are running everything.
Questions from the board for the management committee? Hearing none. That moves us to item 14A.
Sorry, I'm so sorry to do this.
Go ahead.
I have my laundry list of things that I have lined up with we need to set a tour for new board members, and Gary and I had in mind that we were gonna do this tour at the end of April, but since you're opening water in Hatch, maybe we could make it the week later and actually get to see some water in the system. So we were proposing new board member tours. The problem with this is it takes us 2 solid days to do a good tour for new board members when we're training you guys. We could do it in 1 day, but boy.
But
would
don't
we be
recommend
tired.
it. Don't
Boy,
recommend
would
it.
we be tired. So I'm thinking what we're gonna have to do, because so much of what Gary and I do on these tours is Gary gives you the management ops side of things, and then I fill in the gaps on where the legal pitfalls are and what our cases look like and why our litigation looks like it does, or why our positions look like they do on the legal front. So it's really a tag team effort. We were considering the 1st through the 4th that week. To try and schedule board member tours. Now, the problem with the 1st is water's just gonna be opening, so there's not gonna be actual water in the system. We could do the 2nd through the 5th, and that's gonna be, I mean, you're talking 2 tours. I'm expecting, I don't think we could cram everybody in 1 car. I would not want to, basically, because we could. But Gary will be in the front driving with board members, and I'll be in the back and yelling at each other over seats, over conversations. It would be better if we could keep the groups small. So how does that week look, the 2nd through the 5th?
Al, Sam, Tracy, right?
And exactly how many hours are you talking about? Like how many days?
So this would be 2 days, and Gary and
2
I,
full days.
this is no joke. We leave like 7, 8 in the morning, and we're back at EBID 7, 8 PM. Now, if we split it up, we could probably do it in 2 days in a normal like 8 to 5. You think?
Yeah,
But
probably the first tour would be in Hatch and then end up Leesburg or central area, and then start at Mesilla Dam and go down south the next day, and you get see it all.
And like I said, we can do it in 1 day. I think Steve, no, you went on the 2 day, yours took 2 days. You did a 1 day, and wasn't that miserable? We were in a car all day. And
Don't do
then,
it in 1 day. That's my guess. Don't do it.
I think you get way more out of a 2 day period.
You know where a good spot for the last stop of the second day would be? Shane Bridge.
No, the best stop for the last stop is always beer.
We don't
I
have to,
think they
we
have
don't
beer at
have to
Cushing
plan the
Bridge.
touring here. We just have to schedule.
Shane, of course, is the new index point, and then you hit Chocas on the way back.
So we don't have to plan the tour today. We just have to schedule it.
So how about second and third for the first heat, fourth and fifth for the second heat? How-
All right, who's available when?
Either for me.
I can do second and third.
I can do second and third.
You good with the fourth and fifth, Sal?
Greg Plum?
Fourth and fifth, probably.
You know, I could give you a pass because you have already done this. I did have to restrict a lot of what I talked about because you weren't the client in that car.
I was
That
in
day?
Gary's car, so I plugged him.
Yeah, we were, that's right. You didn't get the insurance. I can't exempt you. Sorry, you're on the hook. Dwayne, you've only got part of the tour.
Whoa.
So I would say I could exempt you for day one, which is the hatch part, because you have done that part with me. But you didn't get Gary for that part. So I could, if you wanted to do just one day, I could do the third or the fifth and exempt you from hatch.
Either one, I can do either one.
Do you want to do both days with us or just one day?
I'll do both. Okay.
I like it.
So which one do you prefer? The fourth, fifth, or the second, third?
Fourth and fifth, if that works.
It's 5 hours later.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And so we'll work on logistics. Primarily, Gary will probably work with you on logistics. Particularly, we don't like the hatch board member to have to drive all the way down, to just drive back in the evening, but we might have to do some of that. So we'll work on some logistics. Expect to hear from Naomi and Gary to help me put those tours together. And I should just ask, any other takers, anybody else want, I can have up to 4. I don't want to have a big carload. You won't get a lot out of it. And if you've already been on the tour, I'll throw you in the very back, but.
Put me down for the second and third tentatively, Sam.
Okay, right.
Mr. President.
And so this is an attorney-client privileged meeting, so you'd be in the car with us and so it's.
Understood.
Okay.
Dr. Fox?
Yes, Samantha, there's any chance that there'd be room for a staff member or two? I would be very interested myself.
In the one vehicle, probably not with 3 board members and Gary and I at that point, but you could follow along behind us or something. I don't know. We'll have to figure that out because there has not been staff room in the past. Is the
I
problem.
wouldn't have assumed there would be, but I would nevertheless be interested. Maybe.
And the problem with you, Bud, is you're huge, so I can't just throw you in the back. Yeah.
Maybe if,
Sounds like somebody's not accommodating her disability.
Oh, no.
got on the ground anyway.
Mr. Wrestling,
Eric, in the past, we've addressed it by just you going in with another staff member
Okay.
and meeting it. The stop.
James and I were just,
Yeah, James is gonna be key on these, except the problem with James, he's gonna be a little busy that week too.
no, I know.
So, but we've also had times where we schedule like Patrick to meet us at certain places, Leo to meet us at certain places. So we'll have to run logistics, but Gary's tagged with that, so we'll loop you in if we can.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that, Mr. President. I have my
that is all right.
laundry list of things. And I think somehow I covered everything I was supposed to.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The compact meeting, have you decided one board member to attend?
Bill Paul's going.
So we're total of 4, right?
Yes,
Right.
no, 4. And James,
Oh, sorry, yes.
cancel 1 room.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments from the board or the management committee before I move on? Samantha, did you have anything else on your list for that? Give me a moment.
Not until legal update.
Okay, so that moves us to item 14A, the legislative update. Ms. Salzman.
I'm gonna skip that. We don't have time, other than to say hold October 3rd through the 5th, because we are doing the Rio Grande Water Users Association's first meeting, so like CRUA on the Colorado, we're setting one up on the Rio Grande. And it's by invitation only, and lucky for us, you guys have an invitation because I'm setting it up. So we need a lot of people there for maybe. So hold October 3rd through the 5th, that'll be in Santa Fe.
Santa Fe.
And I will actually, if we can get a quorum, I will call an open meeting for it. So sometimes what happens is I will say, please don't make it a quorum so I don't have to call an open meeting. And sometimes, for example, when we have, say, court in the United States Supreme Court with the hearings in El Paso and we get 8 board members showing up, I'll call an open meeting so that the board can go and listen and talk about those issues if they want to. It's technically a public meeting, but we have to do it to make sure we maintain compliance with Open Meetings Act. Right. So that's the only thing on that one. On the LRG DRT stuff, the only thing that I will say is, Gary, I need another tour agenda, a 1-day tour for the Bureau of Reclamation, EBID and IBWC to focus on stormwater capture, restoration sites, and primarily in the Patch and Northern Central area, not necessarily down south, and that's gonna be April.
Those 2 days,
No, it's 1 day.
this something in the schedule,
Oh,
yesterday maybe.
was that the one I haven't
It's on
responded
the
to?
schedule.
Because, okay, yeah, so what happened with that was Jennifer texted me and said, never mind, hold off. So, start with the 1 day, April 25th. Focus on restoration sites, stormwater capture, flood control. And, we're doing a tour on LRG DRT stuff, to try and keep bringing money in. So tag teaming on what we're doing in DC next week, then we're gonna do another federal agency tour. The press release in your,
And you said April 25th is on that?
April 25th, yes. And that unfortunately will not involve board members. I would like it to, but that's actually going to be more of a settlement implementation planning sort of agency meeting. So I don't see that being a good use of your time. In your board book, you'll see that there is a press release about the Bureau's budget for this year. The reason I put that in there was just to flag for you that it's just gigantor. I mean, we've just not seen those kinds of dollars come through the Bureau of Reclamation or other federal agencies, so that's a big deal. Let's see what else is on the list. Yeah, I'm gonna skip the other stuff this time. I'll brief you guys next month. We're out of time. We have to be somewhere by 3:30. Selena? You ready for me?
Ready.
Okay. I spoke to, well, I researched several headhunting firms and spoke to a couple of them just to get the process of what it would be if the board chose to go that route, to fill the manager spot. You know, it's not like a normal staffing agency. They look for very unique people for unique positions, which I think we fall under. It's not cheap either, it's expensive. They base it on the salary that you're going to offer for the position. It ranged from 30% to 33% plus bonuses and all these add-ons. So if you use those percentages, you're getting pretty close to the $60,000 mark where we would have to do an RFP. So that's something to consider. Basically what they do is it's around a 90-day process. And this is just an example of one of the firms. It's a 90-day process. In the first 20 or so days, you get 3 candidates. They handle the interviewing process. They help with the transition and all of that. To get started, they would need a job description, the scope of work that EBID would expect them to do, and they would go from there. I did find one firm that the way they do their fee is there's a nominal fee up front, and then I think it was at the when you get the 3 candidates that they propose to you, half of their fee is due, and then when the position is filled, the rest of the half. And this firm, you can fire them at any time.
you're not locked in with them. So if you don't like the job they're doing, you can drop them. I'm assuming others aren't like that. So if you want to go through the RFP process, you might want to look into the specifics of that, but that's what I got.
For RFPs, you would have to consider what the total could be, and make sure you can manage it to keep it under 60,000. Otherwise, you do have to go to bid. You have to go through the full procurement process. And so the way it works is, if it looks like it's gonna be a nominal fee up front, but then you're gonna end up paying $60,000 on the end, you have to go for RFP.
The numbers I was playing with based on, how the position was handled last time, you're very close to that 60,000 mark. It's between, 50 and 60. And that was considering the firm that, had a flat percentage rate with no add-ons. So,
Anything else, Celine?
No.
It's all there.
So separate and apart from Selena's work, I know that I was not given this assignment, but our lobbyist contacted me, as did multiple irrigation districts, to ask how things were going and offer support. And the other irrigation district managers primarily know Gary and I from all of our federal sort of work that we do. And their offer of support was essentially, don't make a mistake in how you hire your next person. And the idea being, headhunters are very expensive and they will produce your random normal corporate crony, and they're not going to produce someone in the industry who knows what they're doing, or produce like I heard the sentiment of, we want someone homegrown, we want someone who knows us, we want someone from here who can, we want someone who knows our business. You're not going to get someone in the industry through these headhunting firms. They said primarily because some of them have tried it and it failed miserably after a lot of money. So they were very cautious of that. And they also suggested that you give yourselves time. And the number one suggestion there was, don't rush the process and don't have preconceived notions of where you might end up. Now, assuming you don't have your all-star candidate, which some of them have said, be looking carefully because you might already have your all-star candidate before you go down this really comprehensive, complex road. You might already have the person that you need. If that's the case, then do it the simple way, hire the person you need. But if you don't, then what they said was hire someone in the interim, even if it's just a formal Pat, Phil, and Samantha to be the interim managers. That brings us under the cloak of EBID's Tort Claims Act protection versus just our liability protection from our insurance. And they said, then you give the time that you need. And what one of them did was they said, while we were in the search mode, we said for X period, this person will be our manager. And at the end of that period, we expect that we will have someone starting or have moved. You're going to probably plan to have someone move here. So relocation takes time, all of the giving notice to other jobs, all of that takes time. So they said, instead of rushing, because you do need someone now, don't force this. Give yourself the breathing room you need to tap someone to say, now you're doing this. This is not, you're not in emergency operations where we're just management committee now. Tap someone, make them the person for the interim period, even if it's just a month or 3 months, or maybe you do 6 months. Greg, I know you mentioned you were concerned. This is an election year. Some farmers think that we should wait to hire someone till after the election. If you asked us, I think we would say, holy cow, what do we do for 9 months till you guys go through an election? Tap someone or someone's, get them going, get them on the direction you want to see. And then what they said was make those people available to train your new person. So have overlap. Well, that's what we were doing, right? And Gary will still hopefully be around and on contract because he has been helping me tremendously while I'm doing this stuff. But what you want is someone who has the authority your entity needs, who has the legal protection your entity needs, and who gives you a buffer so that you're not rushed. And that was the general guidance, was in addition to don't do this by headhunting outside of your industry. Do this in a structured way so that you're not under the gun.
Thank you, Samantha. So bringing this back to the board. So based on what we've been presented from Selena, and then the additional input that Samantha's forwarded on from other folks in our industry. To do this quickly, we would need to hire a firm now. We would need to somehow figure out how we keep that under $60,000, because that is what would be required to do that without an RFP. I will tell you, it is my opinion that probably cannot be done. But that is still an option for the board to give direction to. If we want to go with the headhunting firm, it probably makes sense to do an RFP. The earliest we could be approving that RFP would be at the next board meeting, and that would be a significant crunch on staff in preparing that RFP for us to approve. In either choosing that direction or choosing a direction where we're going to take some time to set up a process to do this differently without a headhunter, I would agree with Mrs. Solopeg. We need to make a decision on whether or not we're gonna appoint an interim manager while this process plays out. The process, how you want that process to go, is the piece that I'm asking you to contemplate and give direction to today. We don't have to pick an interim manager in the next 10 minutes. I would prefer if we didn't discuss names in the next 10 minutes. I just want to know, what is it that the board is interested in doing? Do you want to have an interim manager for a period of, say, up to 12 months? While we work on the process of finding, hiring, and putting in place a new manager? Do you want to hard charge an RFP process and simply keep the management committee team that we currently have in place while we expedite the selection of the new permanent manager? What are the thoughts of the board? James?
We hired a guy that didn't know anything about agriculture or nothing. You know what happened to that. I mean, all he knew was 50 cents and how to cut 50 cents away from people. That was just, and that's what all these farmers down south wanted, but you cannot. At this day and age, like I said, it's $8 a gallon for diesel. I mean, how you cut? So I would go, you guys going and look for people in the field. I mean, there's people in the field that probably want to move, or, what they want to, somebody finds somebody, go interview. I mean, they can come and interview, you don't have to hire them. If they feel like they want to come back to the valley, let's say they're born here, and they had to go to college and everything else, but he's probably up in age where he wants to get away from his own job, and he still knows farming, so because he's probably raised on it. Like you said, you can't rush this thing. We rushed it last time. That was.
So to be sure I understand what you're suggesting, James, you're suggesting that we not try to ram this through in the next 3 to 4 months.
Right.
That we set up some sort of.
Be over the water system irrigation in 3 to 4 months. So then you will be relaxed at the end. And then you can start looking at it. I know it's gonna be rough on you guys since the water.
We need an inner
I
person.
don't want to train a new manager in the middle of flood ops.
I appreciate that. Thank you for the input on that.
Yeah,
Mr. Lack.
I
I
like the
know you
idea.
can tell me to, but.
Yeah, I like the idea that we can have someone step in as an interim manager for a while this process is happening. Because that gives us time. I'm not real big on a firm outside our community, outside the farm and family. Now, I'm not saying that talent can't happen, because you can find good people every place, and you can find those that aren't real good in any place. But I have, in my opinion, the people that have worked for me best are the ones that I have been around for a while. We've made some rush decisions in our life and regretted them. And we've also made decisions we thought were pretty good that ended up pretty good, some not so good. But the thing of it is, we have someone that can just already, who knows the culture here, they know where all the bones are buried, they know everybody in place, and you can put that person in charge and see how that works for a while. That gives you time to do whatever you need to do. When you pick someone from the inside or from the outside, at least you're keeping the thing in continuity, and that's important right now, because we're fixing to go into a water system in a week or 2 weeks. We're going to start to work You need someone who kind of knows the backyard.
Thank you, Mr. Lack. Other comments from the board?
I just
Tracy.
agree with Joe Paul. I mean, one of my first questions first day was, who's the interim manager? Because that's kind of where your mind goes in any organization. Who is that person? And so I think that's key to get an interim manager. My question would be, how would that person interface with the management committee?
We would, so the recommendation is to get rid of the management committee.
Entirely.
And appoint an interim manager. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't say two other things. First, one, our lobbyist has already given me suggestions for how to start the process, and I have started the process of reaching out to my colleagues across the West for headhunting purposes, not through a firm. Okay, so the idea being, get the word out there that we're looking for a longer term manager. Second would be, you have a few limited options if you don't want to hire someone who's outside, who doesn't know anything about anything. You've pretty much got people in this room to pick from, right? I mean, board members aside, the only ones you're looking at in this room are the only ones who actually know how EBID functions, what happens here, why it has to happen that way, where we can make changes, where we have to be careful making changes. And so, Bill and I are pretty much your interim managers right now because we have told Greg, whoa, liability, hold on, we're just gonna keep you up to speed. That is an option, one or both of us. Gary's an option, any of your senior leaders are options. But, you know, one of the things you guys are gonna have to grapple with is, you know, Greg worries a lot about the politics. I know some of you do and some of you don't. If you appoint an interim manager, say you appoint Gary, you might have an uprising in the South Valley who were the ones who fired Gary in the first place. So there's gonna be politics with whatever you choose, frankly.
Did that answer your question? I'm not sensing that it did.
Well, it didn't because I still don't know, would you as the management committee, if we hired an interim manager, you would, it seems like you have to work with that interim.
Yeah,
Let
so
me give
Billy
you-
won't go away.
Let
because
me
we
give you
still
my
have a real job.
expectation. My expectation would be, there was an interim manager, they would take over the daily management tasks the management committee is doing. There is more than enough work currently for our hydrologist and our legal counsel. I would expect them to be working with the manager, to some extent, the president of the board, at least weekly, probably multiple times a week, to make sure that things are aligned. and
I
that we're
just
all
made
running
it
it.
laugh because I said, daily, because the reality is, Phil and I are still gonna have the same job.
Yeah,
We're
that's-
just gonna have
absolutely.
less of the management side and more of our real job. So, it wouldn't necessarily change our involvement, other than that we would have someone else to be in-house helping with senior leaders.
You'll still be doing your job every day, so that contact is kinetic.
Dr. King,
Yeah.
We need to reduce our exposure.
thank you.
Yeah,
I would agree
That's
with that.
are you talking about the insurance issue?
Well, yeah, I mean, one way or another, we have to, either by getting a, you know, manager in there or whatever, we need to limit our exposure because, one of the things that concerns me is I'm the only licensed engineer now, and I'm doing dam work. And the liability exposure doing dam work is crazy.
Yeah, so I've told Phil he's actually not doing dam work. NRCS and Dam Safety
Yeah,
Bureau
that's-
are,
I've been trying to,
and
I've been trying to limit my exposure by having other people with licenses do the work.
right,
Yeah, you need to do less damn work.
but that's not the management side of things. That's not actually the management side of things.
No.
That's a product of not having an in-house engineer. Phil is having to fill that role anyway. That's a whole different ball of wax. The reality is, when I looked at the hierarchy of liability protection, I have the best liability protection for the way the management committee is functioning. Next is Phil, last is Greg, with almost no protection. So I set him aside and said, whoa, horsey, we can't do that to you. But then I have to be really careful what I involve Phil on, because he doesn't have broad protection.
What you would be doing, appointing an interim, if it's Phil, or maybe it's bringing someone else on board, they would take on a lot of those tasks. So I would very clearly then only have one hat, or I would have two hats. But I would have the cloak of EBID's protection over me then, at that point, or over Phil. So if you appointed him an interim manager, he would be doing dam work as an EBID employee, basically.
If
You would have different protections than what we currently have with just our private insurance. You could hire someone outside brand new. Please think carefully before you do something like that.
If we appoint someone that's not, Sam and Phil together, the management committee will dissolve and move back to the ordinary role
That's right.
Right.
of legal and lobbying, hydrology expert, management, governance.
Does that
Does that
answer your
That
question?
is, yes.
Yeah, okay. Does that-
And not to throw a huge monkey wrench into anything, but when we were in Santa Fe last week, Phil and I got a lot of agency to agency interaction where they were saying, wow, you guys could really get a lot done right now, the two of you. And yeah, that's true. I mean, because now I'm relying on Gary and Naomi are getting a bunch of my stuff done. We have that good interface with the federal agencies. You would not have me toting around a new manager that I have to introduce them and then they're gone in 6 months. There would be continuity with those federal agencies. A lot of them really liked the idea of us managing, which was sort of an interesting breath of fresh air because some of them used to hate us. But now they're like, oh, this actually works for EBID. And the reason it's working is because when we're in settlement implementation mode, we're working really well with them, not with my lawyer hat on, but just in general trying to implement. And so they're seeing that different side of things, but it would really provide coverage for Phil that he doesn't have and more coverage for me. Or it would give us that ability to step back and say, that's not our issue then. And
Other
we just
people-
advise the person.
Other feedback from the board.
I think we need to think long and hard about what direction we go this next go round on who we hire, who we bring in to run everything and do everything. That's something we want to rush into.
I agree.
Do you have anything additional to add, Sam?
No, I agree with what you're saying. That means to jump in and do something today. And I think I need to process it a little more. But, I know something's gotta happen, but you're basically saying in-house with somebody we're looking at right now. Right?
I'm suggesting to you that if you're going to continue with the settled sort of realm that we're in right now without a major new upheaval, that you're gonna need to probably focus on who's in this room if you're gonna appoint the interim.
And I'll give you my opinion of that, Sam. This is somebody that's gonna be here for 12 months. I don't need them learning the district. I need them being able to step in and fill that role for 12 months. The people that know the district are the people that are currently working for the district.
We got Mrs. WH, you can run.
So I concur with Samantha's opinion on that, that the folks that we have are, current past senior leadership of EBID. Those are the folks that know the district that can step into the role today. Move us through water season, move us through the budgeting process, get us to next spring. If that's what we're looking at in terms of, we want to take our time in sorting out the selection.
And I have elections to plan for this year, which is a lot of work for some of us. There's a whole bunch of reasons why it would not be a great idea for us to start training an interim and then have to train a new one and just do all this training for people who are just going to be a revolving door. Now, that's not to say that we should just put this off forever because it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard no matter what we do. We know that.
Sam, did my comments help to?
Well, you're trying to get an answer from the board to go ahead and say we will make a decision by next meeting, or
If we're,
keep it in-house and use it to the benefit.
if, what I'm looking for guidance from the board is we need to establish what our management solution is going to be. One of the options is to hard charge bringing in a new manager. I am not hearing from any of my colleagues currently that that is the direction they want to go. So given that, the question is, do you want to move forward with trying to select an interim manager? Or do you want to move forward for the next 12 months with the existing management committee? That's
That's the question.
the question. That's what I'm looking for guidance from my colleagues on.
Well, I guess what I would say to rephrase it is, if you're going to continue with the existing management committee, it needs to be formal board action appointing us as the interims and setting Greg aside as a formal matter. He's the board president. We're still gonna be talking to him almost daily. But as a formal matter for insurance and liability coverage, to make sure if you're wanting to continue with the sort of committee approach, give some sort of definition to that instead of just, the way I put it to Greg was, when you have something major happen, you get this like period of leeway where you can kind of get your ducks in a row. Well, we've had 4 weeks, that's over. We need to have at least a middle ground plan and then work on the longer term plan. Otherwise, I might have to start setting him aside on certain things because of his insurance coverage. What I don't want is by default for it to end up being an end run on what you guys want, which would then be, I'm having to help them make management decisions that he can't help with and he can't.
Is the committee approach working for the time being? I mean,
Bill and I have always,
realistically, it's, I mean,
Bill and I are good. No matter what you tell us to do, we have our division of duties. We understand our lanes. It is working from our perspective as the sort of management. Yeah. That will always work for Bill and
Yeah, it'll work, but what I would suggest is an interim for this reason, right, Paul? These guys are gonna really start cranking up, especially when they start getting, all these matters going. And I think whether it be one of the ditch riders that runs the truck off in the ditch or something, they need to call somebody who then can get a hold of somebody right then. They don't need to form a posse and go find the committee and bring everybody in to make a decision. I think as this thing fires up and you start to work, you need to be pretty quick on the response time. And having an interim person there will absolutely make that happen a lot quicker.
we're doing that already. So if it's something in
Okay.
Phil's realm, he gets the call, he takes care of it. He'll call me on his way and go, hey, I've got this going on. Yeah, go do it. That's a you thing. So as much as we are governing by consensus, it's that I trust him, he trusts me, we know our realms. And so if something happens in one of those realms, we just update the other, get general feedback. We talk to Greg twice a week, but I'm not rushing the ambulance out into the field and Phil's not rushing into the office sort of thing. So there's that natural divide. There is the workload issue, but frankly speaking, my workload is a lot lighter and your bill this month is gonna be a lot lighter. I haven't been traveling. I haven't been working near like I have been. I've even got my litigation update for you. If you want to spend another 4 hours with me, I've got about 10 more items to cover. in
What's your deadline, Sam?
3:30.
Okay.
So 3:15, I should be on my way. So the management committee thing is working in the sense of, when Phil and I have an issue that we both need to be in the room on, we talk about it in advance for both groups. We have separate issues. That's a you thing, Phil, go do you. This is a me thing. We brief each other and then what we're doing, we separate out what our legal meetings are because I don't have the attorney-client privilege in the management realm, but I do in the legal realm. So a lot of the times you'll catch me telling Phil, not now. We'll talk about that at 10 a.m. instead of at 7:30 a.m. This is management, that will be legal. And I'm clearly delineating that on my bills so that you can track what I'm doing management wise versus what I'm doing legal wise.
I'm just asking to see if it buys us another to the next meeting or whatever, so for some of the new members to think about it. Or whatever, I'm just trying to see what options are available to us out there in the.
If there is a sense of urgency, could we go to May? We could. I would recommend that we try to find a way to sort out what we're gonna do for interim management today. Tracy,
When you say the interim manager is in this room,
potentially,
potentially, we're not talking about Sam and Phil, correct?
It could be, it depends on the direction of the board, so I don't actually know exactly what my colleagues
I
are thinking.
cannot- Is that an okay question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, now, fast they had a board member as manager.
Right, so
What do you got, what do you got? going?
this is my thought on that, Tracy.
I also got legal advice that they should not have done,
So this is my thought on that, Tracy.
okay,
yeah.
Generally speaking, I'm not interested in discussing the pros and cons of individual publicly. I think that is unfair to those individuals.
And
I
Greg, you're not
understand.
checking your text messages then, because I told you a long time ago, you could have taken this into closed session.
Thank you. The discussion of the process should take place here. If we're not moving in the right track, if there is significant opposition to the board in going towards appointing an interim manager, we need to know that now in open session and discuss how we're going to move.
So you're looking at ways. Is say you wanna know somebody that's been in farming or kids or something. That's been in the Sea Valley and Rincon Valley or whatever, or you.
That sounds more like you're talking about the future long-term manager of EBID. And I am not suggesting that we are ready to start discussing them.
He's talking about an internship versus status quo.
Yeah, I'm talking about
Interim.
interim being someone I don't have to train, someone who can hit the ground running, someone who's me, that I'm not gonna have to skip a beat, right? Phil and I, Gary, we don't skip beats. I would have, if we, for example, if we tapped Leo to do this, no offense, Leo. But Leo's gonna sit down with me the first day I have a legal briefing and he's gonna go, why am I doing this? And so there are those kinds of limitations too. What I'm suggesting is that the guidance that we were given was nail yourself down for a short period of time. I wasn't even talking 12 months, but give yourself a period of time where you have a breath to take, that you know somebody knows what they're doing and it's under control and you have good control over that person. And then you get to the point where you're looking, now long-term, what do I want? Farm boy, farm girl? Do I want a corporate manager? Do I want someone off the stock exchange? And you plan then in that 6-month period. That way there's not just this constant upheaval of now there's a new person here.
And you, send a letter to the managers and say, are you willing to do this for 12 months? I mean, you gotta start asking these guys.
I would agree. That
I
said,
mean, you can't just,
the question I'm asking the board today is that a process they want to initiate?
I think
You want to
they don't
indicate-
even do it, tell these guys.
So I've got a yes.
I mean,
Have you had some
If
concern?
you're choosing somebody inside, you better ask them, so if you wanna do it, they can say, maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Calvin.
Yeah, I think, I think we could ask them and see where it is, but that final decision, like right now, we're gonna do this, we can't do it.
Like for the specific individual,
Yeah,
I would agree. We do not have enough information to make a decision on an individual today.
Okay,
But if-
understand then what I'm gonna have to do here in a few minutes, leave, but I'm gonna have to limit who can do what as of this meeting going forward. So Phil can't do certain things because his insurance doesn't cover it. In that interim period, we had a good way to cover it. Small, short emergency interim period. That's over. So I understand the concern of not wanting to make a decision today, but the reason this is before you today is because of liability for both the district and your contractors who are doing this work.
We have some urgency.
Yes.
yeah.
Is there any opposition to the idea of selecting an interim manager for some definite period of time, whether that be 9 months, a year? Is there any opposition to that? I'm not hearing any, so that's the direction we're going to move in. We will be discussing this further. If needed, we will call an emergency board meeting to between now and May 10th to work this issue. Elise, you had a final comment.
Just regarding an interim, I think that's a good direction, but I also think the board needs to determine the restructuring of EBID, if that's the direction you're going, I think that needs to be a very big consideration of whether, you know, how you're gonna restructure it before hiring somebody. So if it's an interim person, and nothing against Gary, but the only thing I would be concerned with Gary is that he's on para retirement that negates him from being hired. I don't know about contract, but he can't be rehired. Right, for a year, I think is what it is, yeah. So we have to make sure if that's a direction you guys are considering, that we need to look a different direction.
I would say we don't have what we need to restructure, but that would be why that definite period of an interim, we would be under the old organizational structure.
Right.
And then we would work towards whatever the board's goals are on restructuring. The other caveat here to keep in mind is, even if you do decide to help Bill and I by appointing somebody or one of us or both of us to help with the liability issue, there are still going to be traps to be run, like, are we employees? Probably not. There are ways to do this that you will have to we'll have to outline for you depending on what you choose to do. The big issue today is choose to do something so that I can get it in the minutes so that we have liability coverage.
Good. Could you do like interim, like just keep the committee going until you find an interim person?
And we.
Does that give us the footing to,
I think if you're gonna do that, that gives me no coverage and you might as well just continue your longer term head.
I was
I would say that would, what that would do, and here's my concern. What I didn't want to happen was to have to say, Greg's gotta be set aside for certain reasons, Phil's gotta be set aside for certain reasons. Sam's contract and insurance are the only ones that cover this. And so now Sam's running the district. Now, frankly, a lot of people might be really happy with that. And some people might not. Down in your area, if I roll down there, I've got specific clients who are happy to see me. Otherwise, they don't want Solopec down there. If I go up to their area, it's all hugs and kisses. So it depends on where I am in the district as to whether Solopec is accepted or not. Same with Gary, same with Phil. In fact, Phil gets a ton of major opposition, usually from the pecan growers group. No matter what you do today, you're gonna have politics to deal with.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board? All right, hearing none. The direction we have is that we're going to be sorting out interim management. We'll be discussing this further. We may need to call a special board meeting to get that finalized before May 10th. It is urgent that we come to a decision on that. It is not urgent that we come to a decision on how we're going to select the new manager. We want to take our time in making sure that we do this process correctly.
That's right.
Does anyone feel that I've misstated?
I like
the position
that.
of the board?
We covered it.
Thank you. That is all that I have on the agenda. We still have some closed session matters. Is there anything you want to add before I move into closed session? Hearing none, I will accept a motion to move into closed session pursuant to section 10-15-1 of the page. I have a motion from Frank Alpec,
Second.
a second from Tracy Etlinger. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? It is present. The ayes have it. Motion carries. We are in closed session.
Mr. President, if you may, Samantha, do you need me?